Okay, let's unpack this. If you're doing business online in Europe, listen up, because there's a pretty major deadline approaching.
Yeah, it really could shake things up for your website.
Exactly. So today we're doing a deep dive into the European Accessibility Act. We're working from some great source material, an expert guide, and a really detailed FAQ.
hmm And our goal here is basically to give you the rundown on what this regulation actually means for your website, your online stuff, and why you really need to get on top of it now.
So what's the core idea?
At its heart, it's about making sure everyone, and that includes people with disabilities, can, use websites and other digital things without running into roadblocks.
Okay, makes sense. So the big question from the sources then, who exactly needs to comply?
Right. It's pretty clear if you look at the guide, if you're selling products or services to consumers in the EU,
Okay.
and you hit certain size criteria, that's basically 10 or more employees,
Yeah.
or if your annual turnover or your total balance sheet goes over 2 million euros, if that's you, your website needs to follow this act.
10 employees or 2 million euros.
Got it. And what about the timing, the deadlines?
Yeah, the timeline is key. So starting June 28, 2025, which isn't that far off, any new websites have to be compliant right from the get-go.
Right out of the box. Okay.
But for existing sites, ones already live before that date, there's a bit more time. They have until June 28, 2030.
Okay, 2030 for older sites. But wait, there was something in the source material about big changes, right?
Exactly. This is super important. If you make what the guide calls substantial changes to an existing site after June 2025.
Like a total redesign or moving to a new platform?
Yeah, things like that. Or adding major new interactive stuff. If you do that, the compliance deadline for that site gets pulled forward. It needs to be compliant immediately after those big updates.
Wow. Okay, so you can't just coast until 2030 if you're planning a big revamp soon. That's a critical planning point.
Definitely. Now, you might be wondering about exceptions.
Yeah, are there any? Well, yes. Micro enterprises, and the definition here is strict. Fewer than 10 employees and less than 2 million euros in turnover or balance sheet, they're formally exempt. For now, at least.
Okay, so the really small businesses are out.
Formally, yes. But the source material strongly suggests they should still aim for accessibility. Better usability, better reputation, even SEO benefits,
Makes sense. What about bigger companies? Any loopholes?
There's something called a disproportionate burden clause they can try to invoke. But the source is clear. This isn't a free pass. It doesn't mean full exemption.
So what does it mean?
They still have to implement all the accessibility measures that are reasonable for them, and they need a plan to make things progressively better over time.
Right. And if you are supposed to comply and you just don't, what happens then?
Penalties. The sources talk about sanctions at both the EU and national levels. We're talking potential fines, and they can be hefty.
How hefty?
In serious or repeated cases, it could be up to 5% of annual turnover. Or fixed amounts, maybe hitting 40,000 euro or so.
Ouch. That's significant.
And it's not just the money. The source highlights the brand reputation damage. Plus, you could be excluded from things like public contracts. An inaccessible site literally closes the door on a huge chunk of potential customers.
So how do businesses actually fix these issues? The guide mentioned some tools.
Yeah, things like Wave or maybe PageSpeed Insights can give you an initial idea. But, and this is a huge point in the source, no automatic tool, no magic overlay solution can actually replace proper technical work and, frankly, expertise.
Those overlay things, I've seen ads for them.
Right. And the source warns they're often ineffective, can sometimes even make things worse for users with assistive tech. Relying on them gives this false sense of security, but your site might still be non-compliant.
So it's not a quick fix.
Absolutely not. The source even points to the FTC finding Accessibility, which really underlines the risks of just slapping on an overlay and calling it done.
That's a really telling detail. Okay, so if overlays aren't the answer, what is?
It comes down to a proper, detailed technical analysis. Especially because most sites today are built on complex platforms, like WordPress is a big one, right? With all sorts of themes and plugins. Fixing accessibility often means digging into the site's structure. You might need to correct non-semantic code that's like the underlying blueprint, add specific ARIA tags so screen readers understand elements, check how themes and plugins interact.
Yeah, that sounds like more than just installing a plugin. That sounds like needing someone who actually knows code design and content accessibility.
Exactly. And this is where, specialized expertise is just invaluable. Especially navigating something like WordPress with its huge ecosystem.
Right.
The source really emphasizes that tackling these technical issues properly needs someone with deep knowledge, web development, and accessibility standards. It actually points towards consulting professionals in website development who specialize in this, like Michel Bidden. He's noted as a WordPress consultant, digital marketer, data analyst, basically an expert who can do that necessary deep dive analysis and guide businesses to real solutions, not just surface checks. You can find him at michelbidden.com.
Okay, good to know there are experts like that. So does making a site accessible mean it has to look, well, boring or dated? I think that's a common worry.
That's a total myth. The source busts that one wide open. Modern accessibility is built on inclusive design principles.
Meaning?
Meaning you think about all users right from the start. You can absolutely create sites that are fully functional for everyone and look great, modern, totally on brand. The two aren't mutually exclusive at all.
It's really good to hear. Okay, one last thing from the source, this accessibility statement. What is that?
Yes. For companies that are obligated to comply, you need one of these. It's basically a public declaration about your site's accessibility level.
Like a report card?
Sort of. You state if your site is fully compliant, partially compliant, or non-compliant. You have to list any bits that aren't accessible and explain why, offer users a clear way to give feedback, and you need to update it at least once a year.
Does it need a lawyer? Sounds official.
Generally, no, according to the source, unless maybe you're invoking that disproportionate burden thing.
Oh.
It's often a form provided by national authorities. The key is that it must be accurate, that you just publish it somewhere visible on your site, usually linked in the footer.
Okay, so let's pull this all together then. The bottom line seems to be, for a lot of businesses selling online in Europe, this EAA compliance isn't optional.
Not at all. It's a legal requirement, the deadlines are real, and those quick fix overlays just aren't going to cut it.
And navigating the technical stuff, especially on platforms like WordPress, really needs more than a superficial look.
Definitely. As the source material stresses, you need that detailed analysis, likely professional support, to get it right and make sure it lasts. Experts like Michel Bidden can be crucial here.
Right. And thinking beyond just the legal side, beyond avoiding fines, embracing accessibility, it seems like it just makes good business sense, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It expands your audience, boosts your brand's reputation as being inclusive, and honestly, it just helps create a better web for everyone.
So maybe the final thought for everyone listening is, beyond the rules, how can making your online space truly inclusive benefit your business and all your users? What steps are you going to take today?